The first drill, scream cut through the night like a warning shot. Concrete dust exploded around my boots as we circled the black Arcturus LX 900 sitting dead center on my driveway. No talking, no hesitation. 4 marked points. 4 holes. My crew lowered the Titan Guard steel posts inches from her doors, close enough to trap never touching. Ultraset concrete flooded the ground, locking everything in place. By dawn, her luxury SUV wasn't parked anymore. It was contained. And the moment she stepped outside, she discovered the one thing you never tell the wrong neighbor: I park wherever I want. Marjorie Laskin didn't knock. She never did. The morning after she first parked on my driveway, she marched straight across my property with a clipboard in one hand and an apple in the other, like she was inspecting a warehouse she owned. She didn't even look at me before announcing her first order of business. "Evan, your equipment is lowering the neighborhood's aesthetic," she said, snapping a photo of my skid steer without permission. The shutter click felt like a slap. That was her action, her introduction: invade first, justify later. I bought this house 2 years ago, specifically for the massive driveway my construction business depends on, but to Marjorie, that didn't matter. One sentence summed up her mindset completely. As HOA president, I decide what this neighborhood should look like. Her entitlement didn't need repeating. It radiated from every step. When I politely asked her to move her black Arcturus LX 900 from my driveway, she didn't budge. She took a slow bite of her apple, leaned in and said, "Your shade keeps my SUV cool. Be a good neighbor and share." Then closer with that smug certainty, "And remember, Evan, I enforce the standards here." A small conflict followed immediately. A neon HOA notice taped to my door that evening, claiming my company truck parked legally on the street only because her SUV blocked my gate, was visual clutter. Attached to the email was a photo she'd taken earlier, from the center of my driveway. She wasn't just challenging me, she was testing how much of my land she could claim before I pushed back. The first week I tried to let it go. Every day when I drove home, the black Arcturus LX 900 sat across my gate like a barricade someone dared me to touch. My crews needed access, my trailers needed space, yet I was parking a $180,000 work truck on the street like a lost tourist. On the 4th evening, a yellow slip fluttered on my windshield, oversized vehicle warning. A police officer must have passed by and assumed I was blocking traffic. I wasn't. Marjorie's SUV forced me there. I took a photo of the warning, then stared at her car gleaming under the shade of my oak trees. My patience stretched thin, tight as rebar under tension. That night, another neon HOA notice appeared on my front door: driveway use concerned commercial clutter. Nothing about her SUV, everything about mine. It was deliberate, sharp, targeted. I felt the first ember of anger catch in my chest, not the explosive kind, but the quiet, steady burn that tells you something is shifting, something tightening. And that ember didn't fade. It waited. 2 days later, I caught her in the act. I was in my office window open, typing up a bid, when I heard heels tapping across concrete. That wasn't unusual for our neighborhood. Then I heard the camera shutter. I stepped outside. There she was, standing deep on my driveway, phone lifted, snapping pictures of my skid steer, my concrete mixer, even my stacked rebar. She angled the lens like she was compiling evidence for a court case that didn't exist. "Marjorie," I said, calm but pointed, "you're trespassing." She didn't flinch, didn't even lower her phone. "Documenting potential violations," she replied, stepping around my trailer like she owned it. "This equipment is disruptive." "This equipment is how I make a living," I reminded her. She finally looked at me, eyes flat, the same look she used when she gave orders during HOA meetings. "You chose to live in a neighborhood with standards," she said. "If your business conflicts with that, well, maybe this isn't the right community for you." There it was, pressure disguised as concern. That evening, my inbox pinged. A formal HOA email, written by Marjorie, claiming my industrial materials needed review. It wasn't a warning, it was a probe, testing how far she could reach. The breaking point came at sunrise the following Monday. I had a scheduled pour at 8 a.m. My crew was already on site, waiting for the formwork my truck carried. But when I opened my front door, Marjorie's SUV sat, planted across my driveway again, perfectly centered like she'd measured it. My truck, forced onto the curb overnight, now had a second warning tag fluttering under the wiper. One more, and I risked fines, or worse, losing access to the street for all company vehicles. That could cripple a whole week of work. I dialed the non-emergency number. "Can you tow a vehicle blocking my private driveway?" The operator was polite, but the answer chilled me. "Sir, this is a civil issue between neighbors. Because the obstruction is on private property, police can't tow it. You'll need a court order. A court order. Weeks. Maybe months. Meanwhile, Marjorie stood at her window, sipping coffee, watching me like she'd already won. Anger hit hard this time, not the ember, but the full flame. I clamped it down, turned, and walked straight into my office. I pulled out the property survey from my closing folder. The line marking my private driveway ran exactly beneath her front wheels. Then I opened the state regulations book. One clause lit up my brain like a fuse. Property owners may install security bollards on their land provided they do not touch adjoining property or vehicles. Not touch, just surround. A slow, controlled smile took shape. I texted my foreman, midnight job tonight. Bring 4 Titan Guard posts and Ultraset runway mix. By dawn, the job was done. 4 Titan Guard steel posts stood like sentries around her SUV, 3 inches from the paint, 3 feet deep into the concrete we'd poured overnight. The car couldn't reverse, couldn't turn, couldn't open a door more than a crack. I sat on my porch with coffee and waited. At 7:15, the door slammed next door. Marjorie strutted out in her workout gear, ready for her morning power walk until she saw it. Her breath hitched. Her smoothie slipped from her hand and splattered across the ground. What did you do?" she shouted, spinning toward my porch. "I installed security on my property," I said evenly. "Didn't touch your SUV." She lunged for the driver's door. Clunk. The steel post blocked it instantly. "I'm calling the police. You're going to jail." 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled in the same officer who'd given me the polite non-answer earlier. He walked slowly around the SUV, checking the distance, checking the property lines, checking the documents I laid out for him. Then he looked at Marjorie. "Ma'am, he didn't damage your vehicle. Everything here is on his land. Legally, he's allowed to do this." Her face drained of color. My anger didn't spike this time. It settled, steady, cold, justified. Marjorie tried everything, arguing, demanding, threatening lawsuits, but the officer simply stepped aside. "Your car is immobilized," he said, "but that's because you parked illegally on private property. You'll have to arrange extraction." "Extraction," she repeated, blinking fast. "I suggest a crane." The word hit harder than the bollards. Within an hour, a massive truck rolled into the neighborhood, bright orange, loud, impossible to ignore. Neighbors gathered instantly, drawn by the machinery and the rising tension. The crane operator inspected the situation, whistled softly, and said, "Yeah, this is going to cost you. Emergency lift's not cheap." Marjorie glared at me. "You're paying for this." "No," I said calmly. "But the crane company will need access to my driveway to set up. My access fee is $600, cash or card." "You're extorting me. I'm charging for use of my land," I replied. "The same land you've been using for free." She looked at the officer for support. He lifted his hands. "It's his property, ma'am." That was the moment the fire inside me settled into something sharper, a sense of reclaiming what was mine. The crane extended its arm cables, lowering toward her SUV, and the crowd leaned in. Marjorie realized this wasn't just a removal. It was a public unveiling of everything she tried to keep hidden behind rules, notices, and threats. And once that SUV left the cage, her reputation in the neighborhood would be lifted right along with it and dropped much, much harder. The crane's engine rumbled like thunder, rolling down the cul-de-sac. Neighbors poured out of their houses, coffee mugs, phones, bathrobes, gossip-hungry eyes drawn by the sight of a massive boom arm extending over my driveway. Marjorie stood beside the black Arcturus LX 900 she once treated like a crown jewel. Now it looked like an exhibit in a museum of bad decisions. "Stop the crane," she yelled, waving her arms at the operator. "This man vandalized my vehicle." The operator didn't bother looking up. "Ma'am, the invoice is signed. We're proceeding." She whirled toward the HOA board members who had gathered near the sidewalk, 3 of them arms crossed, lips tight, watching the unfolding disaster like they were hoping someone else would blink first. "Say something," she demanded. "You're supposed to enforce the rules." Tom, the treasurer, stepped forward reluctantly. "Marjorie, this is between you and Mr. Pierce." This was hers, all hers. She pointed at me with a trembling hand. "He trapped my car." "This is criminal." I held up the packet of documents I had already shown the officer. "Everything is on my land. You used it without permission. I secured it," the crowd murmured. A few even nodded. The crane's cable descended, hooks glinting under the morning sun. There was no stopping it now. Her showdown was officially public. The crane operator paused before attaching the harness. "Before I lift this thing, just need confirmation. Everyone agrees this isn't going to scrape anything on the way out." "Nothing touches her car," I said. "My measurements are tight." Marjorie scoffed, but Tom stepped closer, reaching for the documents in my hand. "What measurements?" he asked. I handed him the property survey first. The black boundary line ran in a clean rectangle, my driveway unmistakably mine. Then I passed him the photos, her SUV blocking my gate 6 different days, the police warning on my truck, her walking across my driveway snapping pictures of my equipment. One picture hit especially hard, Marjorie standing on my land phone raised, capturing images she later used in an HOA complaint. Tom's jaw tightened. "Marjorie, did you really do all this?" She folded her arms. "I was enforcing standards. His equipment is on his property," Tom said sharply. "Your vehicle wasn't." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Someone muttered karma. Another snorted. Even the crane operator tried not to smile. I opened the final document, the state regulation. Highlighted, underlined, clear as sunlight. A property owner may install security structures on their own land, provided they do not make contact with adjacent property or vehicles. Tom exhaled slowly. "This is airtight." Marjorie looked like the ground was shifting under her feet. "Tom, you don't understand. I'm the HOA president." Tom corrected quietly. "Right now, you're just a resident who parked on someone else's property and got caught." Her composure shattered. But the crane operator had heard enough. "All right," he said. "Let's lift it." The crane cables tightened with a metallic hum as the harness slid beneath the SUV. The boom arm lifted slowly every inch, feeling like a verdict delivered in front of 20 witnesses. The moment her SUV rose above the bollards, the crowd erupted in gasps. Phones tilted upward. Some recorded, others just stared wide-eyed like this was the season finale they didn't know they needed. Marjorie wasn't looking at the car anymore. She was watching her authority leave with it. "Careful with my suspension," she shouted, voice cracking. "Ma'am," the operator called back, "your suspension isn't the problem here." The SUV pivoted, suspended like a giant, expensive ornament, then lowered toward the street. When it finally touched asphalt, the crane's boom retracted with finality like slamming a door on her power. I stepped forward with a clipboard. "Before you drive off, here's the driveway access invoice. $600. "You're not serious," she whispered. "You signed it." The crane operator chimed in, holding his own paperwork. "And here's ours, $3, $200 for the emergency lift." Her eyes widened. "That's robbery." "No," he said plainly. "That's the price for ignoring property lines." Tom approached with a final sheet of paper, one the entire crowd seemed to recognize by tone alone. "Marjorie Laskin," he said, "carefully due to misuse of authority, personal conflicts of interest, and actions that expose the HOA to liability. The board has voted for your immediate removal as president." A stunned silence followed. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the entire crowd joined in, soft at first, then building until even the crane operator shook his head, grinning. Marjorie climbed into her SUV, cheeks burning, hands shaking. When she slammed the door, it thudded against the dent she'd made earlier, trying to force it open. As she drove away, all that remained was the echo of applause and 4 yellow Titan guard posts gleaming like trophies in the morning sun. The crane truck rumbled away first, its massive tires leaving soft imprints on the street. As the noise faded, the cul-de-sac settled into a strange, buzzing quiet, the kind that comes right after a storm breaks, and people step out to see what's left standing. I stood beside the 4 Titan guard posts, still warm from the morning sun, the cement around them a shade darker where it had cured just hours earlier. My driveway, my ground, finally looked the way it should have looked all along, undisputed, uninvaded, undeniably mine. Neighbors drifted closer, not in a rush, not in pity, just pulled by the gravity of what they'd witnessed. A retired man from across the street approached first, hands tucked behind his back like a professor reviewing a completed thesis. "Evan," he said, nodding at the posts that may be the most satisfying thing I've seen in 20 years. A couple from 2 houses down added, "We've been dealing with her long before you moved in. Nobody ever pushed back." I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The scene spoke loud enough. Marjorie's authority had vanished the moment her SUV left its steel cage. Someone else murmured, "You handled it clean. No yelling, no mess. Just decisive." That word lingered. Decisive. Maybe that's what this day was really about. Drawing a line not through anger, but through action. As the crowd slowly dispersed, the air felt lighter. Conversations died down. Doors closed. And for the first time since Marjorie arrived, the cul-de-sac felt like a neighborhood again. Tom the treasurer stayed behind. His clipboard was tucked under his arm, his expression more relieved than stern now that the dust had settled. He approached with the posture of someone carrying both bad news and accountability. "Evan," he began, "I want to be clear about what happens next, so there are no surprises." He handed me a printed notice bearing the HOA letterhead. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't condescending. It was simply honest. Inside was a formal summary of the board's actions. Marjorie's removal as president, effective immediately. A written warning for misuse of HOA authority. A reimbursement clause requiring her to cover all financial damages she caused through personal decisions disguised as HOA enforcement. Confirmation that my driveway equipment and vehicles were fully compliant with regulations, as long as they remained within property boundaries. Tom tapped the section at the bottom. "We're tightening our internal checks," he said. "No more unilateral actions. No more presidents acting like law enforcement. What she did to you crossed too many lines." I scanned the notice. Everything was clean, simple, and binding. "Looks fair," I said. Tom exhaled, maybe for the first time that morning. "Honestly, Evan, you saved us from a much bigger problem. If she'd kept going, the board could have faced legal issues none of us were prepared for." He hesitated, then added quietly, "She was using her title as a weapon. Today proved no title protects someone from consequences." He shook my hand before heading back toward his house. His shoulders looked lighter too, like someone had quietly lifted a burden he'd been carrying longer than he admitted. When the cul-de-sac finally emptied, I walked back up my driveway and rested a palm on the nearest Titan guard post. Its steel surface was cool again, firm, grounded, exactly what it was meant to be. I had installed them as a trap, yes, but now they felt like guardians. I slid my work truck into place, reversing until the rear wheels kissed the edge of the cured concrete. Everything fit perfectly. Tools aligned, trailer, straight gate, unobstructed. The driveway regained the rhythm it was built for. A breeze rattled the leaves above, and sunlight hit the bollards just right, casting 4 parallel shadows across the pavement. They looked almost ceremonial, 4 pillars marking the boundary between someone's abuse of power and another person's right to stand their ground. As I cleaned the dust from the bases, I caught myself smiling, not out of triumph, but out of relief. Peace didn't always come softly. Sometimes it arrived wearing steel and concrete. A neighbor walking his dog paused at the curb and gave a small salute. "Those posts," he said, "ought to be in the HOA handbook under 'Don't test your neighbors.'" I laughed. Not loudly, just enough. When he walked away, I looked back at the posts one more time. They didn't just protect my driveway. They told a story, one the whole neighborhood had seen unfold. A story with a simple message: respect boundaries or they'll be rebuilt in a way you won't forget. And with that, I stepped inside, letting the door close behind me, the quiet settling into the house like a promise kept.